Sea Devils is an interesting serial to say the least. It sees the return of the Master after his imprisonment at the end of the last season, but it also sees the introduction of the Sea Devils, a cousin of the Silurians. Given that the Silurians is my favourite serial of all time, it should be a no-brainer for this to be a serial that I enjoy, but that's not the case as we're going to see. So let's get into the plot. Now the serial has a strong opening, with us seeing a ship attacked and sunk by an unseen force. This is a good opening as it hints towards the threat of the serial in a dark way, before quickly cutting away to the Doctor and Joe, with his plot point being explored further later in the episode, but only after a tangent with the Master, which is where the weakness of this serial comes into play. But we'll talk about that in a bit, as I'll focus on the Doctor and the Master's meeting first, and establish the prison he's kept in. So following his capture at the end of the Demons, the Master has been kept in a prison on a small island, which is heavily guarded by guards who are apparently unable to be hypnotised, who are commanded by Governor Trenchard. It is somewhat odd that he wasn't executed, given the fact that it wasn't just the English who wanted to find and capture him, so it's possible that his capture was kept secret for some reason. But either way, the Master is both alive and in prison, during which he has apparently had time to think over his life and change his ways, something I doubt anyone believed for a minute. But similarly, the Doctor is somewhat convinced by this. It is obvious that he's still evil. This plotline is basically pointless in the overall serial, as it's just a single line which never gets brought up again, which is unfortunate, as I think this idea could have been explored, or been a twist that he is behind it after all, instead of turning out to be the villain minutes later. The Master I'll talk more about later, but for the moment, he is essentially taking control of the prison by convincing Trenchard to work alongside him, which allows him to leave whenever he wants to gather equipment for his plan. This is all sort of going on in the background for the first 2 episodes, until it takes over as the main plot in the middle of the serial. The opening 2 episodes focus more on the titular Sea Devils, who I'll discuss in full now, as there's a lot of baggage which comes with them in this serial. So the Sea Devils was written on the orders of Barry Letts, with him wanting another Silurian serial, but set at sea. But Malcolm Hook decided to create a new race that was related to them, as he didn't want to reuse the villains again. This led to the creation of the Sea Devils, with them having perhaps an even more iconic design than their Silurian cousins, as it hasn't been changed to the same extent in recent decades. Fun fact, I wrote the script before the war between land and sea, and I'm not going to change it because I can't be bothered. While I'm on their designs, I will note that the Sea Devils were originally meant to be unclothed, like the Silurians, until someone looked at the costumes and realised that was a bad idea. And so outfits were quickly fashioned from netting, and it works really well. Now, despite being a cousin to the Silurians, an awesome race, I don't really have anything to say about them beyond just their designs, because they don't do a lot. Due to the Master being present, it means that a lot of their potential screen time is taken up by him, with them almost entirely disappearing from the middle few episodes. And when they do appear, they are generally short appearances, where they don't speak. We don't hear a Sea Devil speak until the beginning of episode 5, when we meet their leader, but unlike his Silurian counterpart, there is nothing to him. While the leader of the Silurians wasn't fully explored, there was a character there, but the Sea Devil leader is just there because there needs to be someone leading the Sea Devils. But since the Master is around and can do all the thinking, it means that the leader hasn't got anything to do. The rest of the Sea Devils are just troops, with no personality whatsoever. It's a definite downgrade from the Silurians, and really hurts a potentially interesting species. The Doctor brings up his previous encounter with the Silurians, but due to the structure of the serial, it means that there isn't a notable reaction from the leader. It's unfortunate, but that's really all there is to say about the Sea Devils as characters, and that's nothing, as they aren't characters. Their usage in the story also isn't the most interesting, as they are just soldiers for the Master at times, with them having to take a submarine to free him, and then having to protect him from the Navy. The initial introduction is quite strong, with one of them boarding the fort and killing one of the people on board, before sending the other mad, and then meeting the Doctor. This Sea Devil having no dialogue does hurt it though, as the Doctor tries to talk, but we don't get any line from it, as it just chases him, and then just runs away after the Doctor has given it a shock. This happens during their next appearance when the Master summons one, and after gunning down a few people, it chases the Doctor and Joe, but is scared off again. This makes up their appearances until their attack on the Master's prison, before the Doctor finds their base and meets their leader. Due to this lack of presence, they don't really stick out as much as the Silurians do. While the Silurians also didn't appear until the end of episode 3, the build up to that was incredibly memorable, and then we still had plenty of time to get to know them. In this case, we see them early on, but they don't have any character until the last third of the serial, and even then there is no character to speak of. When watching, I nearly forgot about them during episode 3, which is when the Doctor is a prisoner of the Master, and began to think about how long it was since I last saw them. The only 2 moments that the Sea Devils have a distinctive character are when the Doctor first offers them peace, and when they betray the 2 Time Lords. The first of these scenes is the attempt at peace, which consists of the Doctor offering a chance for the 2 species to make peace, instead of going to war, with the Master trying to dissuade them. Now I say there's some character here, but that's a stretch, as there isn't really a discussion about it, and it's a far less interesting version of the same scene from Doctor Who and the Silurians. There's just something lacking from it.
Why can't you share the planet?
That would be impossible.
Depths of the sea and those areas on Earth where man cannot live can be yours.
Man would agree to that.
There's a chance. Wouldn't it be better to try for a peace than to launch yourself into a war that you cannot possibly win?
This of course doesn't work when the Navy begin an attack on the base, which the Sea Devil leader doesn't seem to realise is because they attacked first, but it ends the potential peace instantly. On the Sea Devil's betrayal, following the Doctor and the Master working together to create a machine that can revive all the Sea Devils in the world, the leader has them taken away and put into a cell. Now this is a betrayal of the Master, due to the Doctor clearly being a prisoner already, but like with the previous scene, there isn't a sense of character behind the decision, it just sort of happens, probably because the script needed them to be together so that they could escape. So there technically is an argument that this was set up with the Sea Devil leader, as despite having been clearly talking with the Master for a few hours before the Doctor's arrival, he quickly turns on him and sides with peace for a minute. But the decision to imprison him still feels out of nowhere. This leads to the Sea Devils having no character even when they should. So with the Sea Devils covered, let's look to the rest of the cast, and we'll begin with Trenchard. So Trenchard is perhaps the most interesting character introduced in this serial, as he's the only one we get a history for, and understand his motivations. Trenchard sided with the Master as he convinced him that the Sea Devils were enemy agents operating in the area, and that they were the only ones who could do anything about it. This of course using Trenchard's patriotism to his advantage. Of course it's revealed that this is in fact not the case, and in fact the Master was trying to contact the Sea Devils, but by the time this is revealed, the Master's plans have reached a point where Trenchard is expendable. There isn't a sense that Trenchard is going to betray the Master after the reveal of the Sea Devils, which does speak to how blind he was with his attempts to protect the country from invaders, although this could have been a redeeming moment for him. Next is Captain Hart, who's the main naval character throughout, with his use often switching between serious and comedy. Now while the switching can definitely hurt the character, it doesn't really in the case of Hart, but more so hurts the story, which is something I'll come back to. Even with the comedy moments, Hart is still a competent commander, with him being the general army type, not believing the Doctor at first and requiring a lot of convincing to change his mind, and then beginning to assist him, before eventually defending him and Joe from the man from the Ministry. He does get plenty of great scenes, but his greatest is probably where he's leading the attack to recapture the naval base from the Sea Devils. Hart also has a secretary, but she's not that important, plot-wise, and kind of disappears towards the end. In fact, when everyone is held captive in episode 6, she's nowhere to be seen. She does side with the Doctor and Joe faster than Hart, and does play her part in convincing him to help them, but she's a very minor character despite her presence. Likewise, the man from the Ministry isn't very interesting, with him just sort of being there because Hulk tends to have that sort of character in his scripts. He's like a far less interesting version of Masters, as he doesn't really have much of a personality, instead he wants to destroy the Sea Devils or eat, with him seeing Hart's secretary as his personal waitress. The Doctor and Joe are on point though, with Joe especially feeling very proactive throughout the serial. There are many escape attempts which involve her playing a big role, notably when she has to break the Doctor out, and later when they have to get Hart out so he can lead the attack on the Sea Devils, which really makes Joe an important part in the events throughout the serial. The Doctor likewise is strong, with him getting to show off his many sides. We get the compassionate side of him trying to find a peaceful solution, which we saw with the Silurians, his technological side as we see him first turning a receiver into a radio transmitter, and later having to work with the Master to make a machine to awaken the Sea Devils. Plus we have him in an exciting chase on speedboats with the Master, which Pertwee actually did himself, and there are plenty of fight scenes, including a notable sword fight with the Master. It's a good showing for the Doctor, but I think the side that wants to find peace isn't as well explored or used as it was with the Silurians, as it feels a bit half-baked here, only really being there for 2 scenes. But a big thing to mention in this serial is this.
I reversed the polarity of the neutron flow.
The third Doctor's iconic catchphrase makes its first and only appearance in his era, appearing exactly halfway through in terms of episodes, as he says it towards the end of episode 6, which is the 64th episode of his era. This also sees the final appearance of Free's original outfit, as after being slowly phased out over the last season and this one, it makes its final appearance. Perhaps the Doctor stopped wearing it after the cape was blown up in this serial. So let's discuss the Master's presence now, and why it hurts the serial. So the Master's return is good, with him being in prison, and so the audience has to get caught up a bit with events, since the demons. But like with a lot of the serials of the previous season, the Master being in it really hurts the other villains. I've already made it clear that the Sea Devils don't get much chance to shine, but it feels worse because of Doctor Who and the Silurians, as we know how great this race could have been. It's also just not a good return from the Master, as having to share the spotlight with the Sea Devils takes away time from him, and it feels like this serial wastes a lot of its time with the Doctor's imprisonment in episode 3. Although despite this problem, the Master does get an absolutely great scene, which is probably the best in the serial.
What are you watching? It seems to be a rather interesting extraterrestrial life form.
Only puppets, you know, for children.
Oh.
I don't really know if he really thought they were aliens or not, but I don't care because Delgado plays it so well. Now, despite just praising a humorous scene, I want to discuss the humour in this serial and why it doesn't work. There are many scenes where the atmosphere should be tense, but the characters are incredibly light-hearted. The notable two are during the scene where the Doctor is working on the radio and we get the interception of the radio station, which the two just laugh off, and then later when they're discussing the Sea Devil threat with Captain Hart while eating sandwiches. In fact, they were made for Joe, and the Doctor tells Joe not to eat them and takes the plate away, before stuffing his face and offering them around to everyone but Joe. It's just tonally wrong, and while I do enjoy humour in Doctor Who, it's just out of place throughout. This again is a problem that is worsened by the fact that Doctor Who and the Silurians exists, as that serial treated everything very seriously, and did still feature comedy, but it was far better used and implemented. Before talking about behind the scenes, I want to talk about the lack of unit in this serial, as this serial is known as a unit serial in all but name. This is due to Nicholas Courtney being on holiday during filming of the serial, and so unit don't appear. Now let's talk about the behind the scenes aspects, beginning as always with the restoration. So the serial was restored with a mix, with the first 3 episodes to be restored with reverse standard conversion, while the final 3 still existed on an original 2-inch videotape. Now I want to talk about the Navy, as the serial had assistance from the Navy for filming, which allowed for the use of a naval base alongside some filming aboard a ship. This does give the serial a sense of scale and higher budget than we'd usually see, and it often looks great because of it, especially the final battle at the naval base. Next up we have the stunt team Havoc, who I haven't mentioned since their first collaboration with the show, but I'm bringing them up now as this serial would be their final collaboration with the show. Finally we have a first for the show, and that's its production order, as this serial was the first to be produced in a different order to the broadcast order, with it being the second serial produced for the season, with Curse of Peladon being made third, despite being broadcast before it. Due to the nature of the show at the time, production had to be kept in order up to this point, but due to the new flexibility added due to changes in how production was handled, it allowed for production orders to be changed up a bit, and this will become more extreme as the show proceeds. So that's about it for the Sea Devils, a considerable letdown. Although it does have its good points, it suffers from the same problem as a lot of the serials as the previous season did, also just being a step down from its predecessor. It's a serial I used to like a lot, but now feels very mid. But next time, the Doctor and Jo are called upon by the Time Lords to deliver a capsule to the far future, where humanity is preparing to leave the planet of Solos, but all is not going to plan, as mutants have developed and the Marshal plans to take the planet for himself. Next time, the mutants.